All right, how we all doing tonight? You can be seated if you like, or you can stand. Either one. So I'd like to welcome everybody here tonight for the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program Teacher Certification course. And I'd like to thank everybody for coming to that's online. We're glad you're here and available. By the way, if you're out there online, you can download these books and the lesson we're on, depending upon what kind of device you're on. It's different ways. Just keep looking there at the beginning. You should find a drop-down menu to be able to do that with. So we are currently in the responsibility unit here. All right. I'm going to reduce that a little bit. Try to. Okay, well, it's not. Okay, and we will be, after a little quick review, we'll be starting out on page 108 after review and looking at the lesson plan. And as far as review goes, it's very simple. We started out this particular chapter. It's called Responsibility in Society. And we've come to a point here where we're talking about crime, incarceration, the way people are acting out here in society. You've already read the counselor that was beaten and set on fire, and some girls arrested after they had this attack in a school. Excuse me. And I mean, it's really tragic. I mean, that was a major deal. And then I think it was Catan that went over some of the statistics of crime, the drug abuse violations, larceny, theft, assault, drunkenness, etc., etc. There's so many of them out there, crimes in the millions. And then he covered the critical thinking and talked about some of the statistics there. And all these things have increased over the years, too. And then what we're going to be dealing with is a little bit about society's response to crime. Now, that was covered also in the last couple classes. And just to look at it on page 105, it says, historically, society's response to criminals has been to incarcerate those who break the law in order to protect law-abiding citizens and reduce the number of crimes. Once a person's found guilty of a crime, he or she can be placed in either jail or prison based on the seriousness of the crime and the duration of the sentence. And it talks about the difference between prisons and jails, and then it kind of starts touching on the juvenile system a little bit. And of course at the bottom it says the main purpose of prisons or jails is to protect society, prevent crime, and rehabilitate. And I think we could put a big fat red X on each and every one of those statements, because that is not what occurs with the prisons or jails. If the main purpose of prisons and jails is those things right there, guess what? It has failed miserably. But we keep pumping money into the machine. Not going to go too deep into that, except for then page 106, we talked about everything you ever wanted to know about prisons but were afraid to ask. And it tells a little bit about, excuse me, the minimum security prisons, how they're open and can kind of be mistaken for a college campus. The medium security prisons, usually you can tell it is a prison. And then maximum security, there's no doubt in your mind that, hey, that's a prison over there, in that field. And talks about on the next page on 107 a little bit about some of the things that take place in prison, the unpredictability of the verbal, physical, and emotional and sexual abuse that takes place in these facilities, and it's rampant in all of them. I would say there's probably not one that there has not been reports of sexual and physical abuse taking place in them, from inmate to staff to inmate, and inmate to staff. I remembered one of the times that I was in a training program to go into prisons and bring the peaceful solution into the prison. And sitting down with, well, a pretty large group of other people that were training and getting certification. And one of the biggest things that they really stressed on, well, there were two things. One was smuggling things into the prison from volunteers like us, people smuggling things in, and they would tell us the consequences that could arise and so forth. But they did say it was a lucrative thing whenever someone did sneak something in. A pack of cigarettes went for big money. And then the other thing was sexual abuse with the inmates. A lot of volunteers get involved in that, but their biggest problem was staff. They have female staff in male prisons and male staff in female prisons. And, a lot of these female staff members and female prisoners were getting pregnant. I mean, it was a very commonplace thing. And what they would do is they would transfer the officer that was involved in the situation, and then, they would go through counseling with the staff or the female inmate, and it usually resulted in abortion or something like that. So there's a lot of theft inside prisons. Inmates' belongings are routinely stolen. The sexual abuse results in a lot of STDs, including HIV. And then there's overcrowding, which isn't talked about much, but you see a lot of times extended on the grounds of prisons, you'll see some trailer, like a double-wide trailer, mobile home type thing put out there with some more cells in them. I have seen some tents before. But anyway, we are going to go back and look at the lesson plan real quick on page, lesson plan 6, page D. And we'll be looking at procedure number 5. And it says to play the song "Do Not Steal." We don't have that available right now, but some of you have requested that I sing it for you. So, I see some smiles out there. Well, that's not going to occur, but I will read it to you. So anyway, this song is called "Do Not Steal." And in the lyrics, some of the questions you might keep your mind open to is, what emotions can someone feel when someone steals from them? How many have ever been stolen from? Pretty much everybody. Have you ever had your house broken into? That's a big one right there. You come home and you walk in and your stuff is everywhere. It seems like they can't just break into your house and take something. They have to pour everything all over the floor, pull out the drawers in the bedroom and throw them on the ground and empty them out and everything, and dump out the stuff in the refrigerator onto the floor and make a big mess. I guess it's part of the fun of doing it. But you feel violated, and then you realize that really the thing that's missing might not be the thing that you remember the most about the whole thing. I think it's the violation. But what are some of the consequences to society because of stealing? And these consequences are some natural type things. Yes, there are consequences like, jail and prison, which is a punishment. We already know that the things that they were shooting for, the purpose really doesn't work, so it's more of a punishment. Some people do get, I've known some men that while they were there, they were introduced to the peaceful solution, and they changed their lives and got out and became productive citizens and teachers of the peaceful solution, in fact. But what are some of the consequences to society because of stealing? So keep these things in mind too. And I'm going to go ahead and read this on page 108. It's the song "Do Not Steal." And it starts out, have you ever been angry? Have you ever been sad because someone took away something that you had? Was it a loved one or something you worked for? In any case, it's time to say no more, no more. No need that you have is worth stealing from another man. When you take without permission, you've made the wrong decision. The consequences of those that use no self-control are felt by all the world, all the world. I have seen children with no fathers and fathers, sons, and daughters stripped away, and I saw their pain. And I've seen people with no water, and for the food they had, they were slaughtered. All this is a shame, oh, a shame. And then there's the chorus, do not steal, do not take what is not yours. Can't you see that's what war and suffering come from? You will not be ashamed if you do not use others for your gain. If you do not steal in any way. And then it says there are things that we can and should not do, and everything it must be guided by rules. We must respect all authority and never endanger another's safety. When we set and live by all these honest goals, we are always showing proper self-control. And then the chorus again. But this particular song, it is kind of catchy, and it does have a continuous type beat that it kind of sticks in your mind, and that's the reason these songs are available to help with that. I know when we do have them, and we can play them in the facilities, whether juvenile or adult prison or whatever, people do enjoy hearing them, and it does stick out, and it stays with them. So one of the things we're going to get into now on page 109, and for those of you who don't know it, if you're not in Texas, the allergy season is well on its way, and the ragweed is in full bloom. If anyone wanted to know, I can tell you from experience. But we're going to talk about the juvenile delinquents, and I know several of the people here in the convention room here where we're meeting for this class. I know several of the people here, and I know some of the stories. And so many of you were involved in being, a juvenile delinquent, and myself included. And some of the people that I grew up with, some of them, got worse off and ended up as an adult in jail and in prison, and some kind of grew out of it and went their own way and turned away from it. Let's start this off there. Young people who are morally irresponsible towards others and commit crimes also suffer the consequences of their actions. Now let me just say this, that consequences come whether you get punished for it or not. Now let me repeat that. Consequences come whether you get punished or not. Does that sound a little confusing? See, the punishment is what society would like to do to you, or sometimes what we want to do to another individual for them stealing from us. We want to punish them. We want to exact revenge. We want to see them taken down. And it's funny that the prison system does that very thing. And that's why it's failing, because it is a punishment thing. It's not about rehabilitating, it's about punishment, and that's why once a person gets into that facility, that they're talked to, they're talked down to, they're treated like an animal. Hey, they might be treating the staff like animals too. So you might say, well, they get what they deserve or whatever, but no, nobody deserves any of that stuff. And the staff, they start out, I knew a guy once that was a prison guard. He started out, he's pretty young, he was like 19, and he got in there and they just tore him up. I mean, they beat him down verbally every day. Here's a 19-year-old, his brain isn't even fully developed yet, and you got hardened criminals, adults that are just talking to this guy in every way, making rude and crude sexual comments towards him and many other things. And here's this kid, a young man that gets in there, and he's thinking, oh, it pays pretty well. I'll go ahead and get this job and, work my way on up the ladder and all that. And he gets in there and he runs into that. Well, it takes a really strong individual to be able to put up with all that stuff in the first place and still hang around, but it takes an extremely strong individual, and one that has a high level of self-respect and self-control, and does have a great understanding about how to conduct himself morally. It would take a very strong one to be able to put up with all that and then treat the inmates with any sort of respect. And I've heard of different staff members in facilities that the inmates kind of liked, that they said, he shows respect and all that, But anyway, so the consequences, though, come, even if you steal something from somebody and they didn't even see you do it, nobody saw you, you got by with it, and, you went home and 2 years later, no one still said anything, you got by with it. Well, you didn't get by with anything. There's a natural consequence that comes with any action like that. Anytime you're breaking any of these moral rules that you should be guided by, whether it be stealing, murdering, you name it. These things stay with you. They stay in your head. They have an effect on how you conduct yourself in the future from this taking place. Maybe you start stealing more. You think someone didn't catch you, but somebody does know, and then your reputation is destroyed because of it. So many things like this, these consequences that are kind of unseen sometimes. So you will suffer consequences for your actions, no matter what it is. If you can take everything you've learned in the Peaceful Solution and all the positive things that you've learned, if you take one of those positive things and you throw it out the window, you are going to suffer some consequences for that thing that takes place. Those who break the law are called juvenile delinquents. A juvenile delinquent is a minor, someone who has not reached the age of 18, who has committed a crime. Recent studies indicate that almost 1/5 of the arrests made yearly are minors. Minors are more frequently arrested for crimes such as vandalism, going out, let me just read it. Vandalism, arson, truancy, missing school. How about that? How'd you like to be thrown into a juvenile detention facility for missing school? What a waste. Running away, breaking curfew, shoplifting, underage drinking, in addition to an increasing number of minors are also being arrested for crimes such as rape, robbery, murder. And the seriousness of many of these crimes has caused many juvenile courts to lower the age of accountability and punish minors as they do adults. See, right there, it's stated. They punish them. Punish minors as they punish the adults. Now, some of the things that we have to keep in mind that got us there in the first place, if you're a juvenile and you're considered to be a juvenile delinquent, you've broken the law, you're dealing with the justice system at this time, some of the things you got to keep in mind that have gotten you there, where did it come from? Some of the things we've talked about in the past, just like peer pressure, right? Peer pressure is an important thing. Peer pressure is very, very strong. If you're with a group of people and they're out doing something and you're in the middle of it too, well, you don't want to be the little pansy or the scaredy cat or there's a whole bunch of names you could throw at it, but you don't want to be that person, so you join in with their fun and games. And many times, this is what lands people in that system. Riding down the road in the country, tearing down mailboxes. I mean, that sounds like a lot of fun, doesn't it? In the back of a station wagon, throwing bricks at the mailboxes or hitting it with a bat or something. Sounds like a blast, doesn't it? Until you get caught by the sheriff and you find out that, hey, it's a felony. Little did anybody know, tearing up federal government property, and it's a felony. And so now you've got this over you. They don't really, they don't look at it real hard, but if you have a reputation already and you get caught doing something like that, they're gonna throw the book at you, the punishment, whatever punishment they can throw. And so these things like that seem like a little thing, they're not so little. The truancy, missing school, I mean, come on. That's a big thing that peer pressure gets people involved in too. Hey, we're gonna skip school and climb up into the mountain, go up in the canyon and go to the waterfall or something, or hey, we're going to skip school and we're going go off here to this cow farm and pick some mushrooms, or hey, we're going to skip school and we're going to, you name it. We're going to go to the liquor store and get some beer and skip all day and party all night and whatever. All those things. If you are untaught, if you have not been taught the peaceful solution, if you have no care or concern for these moral rules, you're going to join right in. You're not going to be practicing self-control. You're going to ruin your reputation. And, you don't even realize that the choices you make are so very important to your life because you haven't even grown up yet. Your brain is not even working. Even the justice system and science knows that the brain is not fully developed till at least 25 years old. So how could you even possibly make rational decisions unless you are consistently taught? We need to teach our children, our teens, we need to consistently teach them peace through the peaceful solution. Well, since minors cannot be housed with adult prisoners, special arrangements for their confinement must be provided. Correctional institutions for minors can be either secure, meaning locked, like a jail, or non-secure, meaning unlocked, more minimum security type thing. And some non-secure institutions are similar to minimum security prisons, and the rooms are set up like dormitory rooms, and the grounds are like a college campus. Others resemble camps or ranches. Well, all these things have their own problems. I'm sure there are some out there that have pristine reputations, but there's a large majority of these camps and ranches that that's not great. It definitely does not rehabilitate. It actually makes a person much, much worse. I wanted to briefly, before I go into that, I wanted to talk about how you end up there. One of the things is influences are all around us. And these influences in the character unit on page 60, for any of you that would care to look at it, but it's called Influences Are All Around Us. Your values play such a key role in developing your character that you must be aware of how influences affect the things that are important to you. So you have to have values. This goes back to the basics of the peaceful solution. An influence is something or someone that has the ability to affect your attitude, your way of thinking, your feeling, and behaving. And as a teacher, we always go back to other lessons in the peaceful solution because they all work together. I like to show this. William will probably be laughing there about this in a minute, but this is the synchronistic self-control diagram. It shows how everything kind of works. First, you have an incident or a trigger, and then your thoughts. You start having thoughts about it. Then your feelings start taking hold. You start kind of losing control there when those feelings kick in. And then you go ahead and you take some type of action, whether it be positive or negative, and then you have to face the consequences or the rewards. And like I said before, the consequences might be inflicted consequences, as in punishment from some authority figure or some other entity, or it might just be the consequences that come naturally that affect your entire being. There's something to be said. If you stand for what is right, you won't fall for anything. You got to stand for something so you don't fall for anything. And if you stand for what is right, and standing for what is right means you have an integrity about you, a moral integrity, that you've been learning these moral rules, and you have a way of conducting yourself and a reputation, and you have a great value system, and you can avoid the negative influences that come your way. On this influences are all around us, it says, have you ever been in a hailstorm and felt like you were getting hit from every direction? Or how about a batting cage or a ball machine went haywire and then it's just going everywhere? But whether you realize it or not, you're constantly bombarded with influences, negative and positive. Everything you hear, experience, and see, as well as every interaction and conversation that you are a part of, have the potential to change the way you think and feel about the things you value. How you are influenced can affect what you value or motivate you to create new values. And so this is the thing about having, a great value system, so you don't get involved in these things. You don't let the negative influences really bother you. One of the things that, talking about the incident and the trigger and the thoughts and emotions, one of the things about the emotions is, here's a list of some negative emotions that I have right here. It's defining emotions, and I'll just read some of these to you. There's aggravation. It's to intensify unpleasantly, to rouse to displeasure or anger. Then there's anger, which is a secondary emotion, but a strong feeling of displeasure, resentment, or hostility. There's ashamed, depression, disappointment, embarrassment, fear, frustration, guilt. And see that guilt right there? The guilt, when you do something and you break one of these morally sound rules that you know are right, and you break it anyway, there's going to be some guilt involved, and that's going to have effects on you also. Hopelessness, despair, humiliation, jealousy, pessimism, rage, rejection, resentment, restless, revengeful, and sorrow, and hateful. These are the negative emotions that can come from breaking these morally sound rules. And these are some of the things that you'll have inside you that will help put you in that bad situation, of having to deal with that justice system. These are some of the things that would be within you that gather up, and then you make bad decisions. You can't make sound decisions. And it all has something to do with having a lack of respect for yourself also. In the respect manual, page 25, this is respect for yourself. If you don't have self-respect, it's not going to work for you. You're going to be involved in these bad situations a lot of times. The greatest thing you can value is life, and when you value your own life, you have respect for yourself. This is a thing where it's a thing where your attitude comes into play. You either have a positive or a negative attitude. And if you have a positive attitude and you have respect for yourself, and you haven't been involved in these bad things that play with your emotions and just get you deeper into that hole, if you have respect for yourself, you're on a path of things going right for you. And we get these thoughts sometimes, just like with the influences that come our way and all. We want to learn to replace those thoughts before they turn into bad feelings and actions. Replace those thoughts. No one's immune to having the negative thoughts. Everyone must deal with disappointments and setbacks and making mistakes. This is part of growing up. So if you make a mistake, it doesn't mean that you're a complete failure. Don't beat yourself up by saying mean and hurtful things to yourself. Just, kick yourself once or twice and get over it and go to work, Start working on it. Do better. And that's what you have to do. This is what the Peaceful Solution teaches. And along the way, instead of having disrespect for others, just like in the classroom here, that picture shows everyone going wild, and that's probably about how it started before those girls set that teacher on fire and everything. But this is disrespect being shown in the workplace, in the classroom, in business. Instead of that, you can have respect towards others. Here we see a classroom with a teacher and respectful students that are answering questions, and we see people showing respect towards one another. And that's actually something that when you get used to doing that and respecting others and showing respect, you want to do it more and more and more, because it helps you feel great, and it gets rid of those negative emotions and now has positive emotions on your side as being part of you, as being part of your reputation. All right, so getting back on this real quick, on page, let's see here, I've got something else. All right, on page 109, in the responsibility unit. I ended up right there about 3/4 of the way down the page when it's talking about these correctional institutions for juveniles, and some resemble camps or ranches. Well, I have just a handful here of things I'd like to show you about these camps and ranches. And this is just a handful. This took me like 5 minutes to get, There's thousands and thousands of this repeat story right here across the nation, not only in our nation, but across the world. So here's one for you. So here's a boys' ranch right here, and they've been accused of having sexual abuse at this place. It's actually been proven, and then they go on to say, what's going to become of this place? Are they going to fire the people that were there or whatever? But it seems to be a normal thing, not original by any means, but normal. Circle of Hope Girls Ranch and Boarding School faces 2 new civil lawsuits over severe abuse allegations. That's sexual and physical. You can look these up for yourself. Child welfare monitors say there's ample evidence that kids were abused at this foster care facility, and going against what the Texas Rangers said about it. But then there's this particular boys' ranch right here that also the same thing occurred with them. They're being investigated and or finding out what they're going to do, lawsuits and everything about different abuse. And then a little closer to home, and this one has been talked about before when it was really in the news quite heavy, but Cal Farley's CEO says, anyway, he goes into describing what they're doing to prevent this thing from occurring again. But from way back in the 60s and 70s and 80s and 2000s, there were abuse allegations of a vast amount. So these are just just a handful of what is out there in these correctional institutions. It seems like there's not a lot of correction taking place. And well, let's go ahead and show the video, please.
On any given night in America, nearly 50,000 youth under the age of 18 are confined in facilities away from home, 2/3 of which are in correctional-style facilities. According to the nonprofit Prison Policy Initiative, this number has decreased over the last 20 years. But the United States still incarcerates the most children in the world. Sarah Hinger is a senior staff attorney with the ACLU's Racial Justice Program.
The United States far outpaces other countries in detaining and otherwise criminalizing young people. And that has, again, similar to the adult system, a disparate impact on youth of color who are disproportionately represented in contact with the criminal justice system.
But why is that? And why are so many youths arrested in the first place? Michael Corriero is a former New York State Supreme Court justice.
At the turn of the 19th century, we created the world's first juvenile justice system. The idea behind that was that as a society, we had a moral obligation to recognize the developmental differences of children as compared to adults.
But the idea of rehabilitation through the prison system isn't working. In 2012, the Department of Justice began tracking formerly incarcerated people of all ages. The latest report, released in July, found that of individuals arrested at age 17 or younger, 71% have been rearrested within 3 years of their release. That number climbed to 80% by year 5. The impact on an adolescent's access to education is part of the issue. In 2015, the Council of State Governments found 1 in 3 incarcerated youth were either receiving or needed special education services. The report also found more than half of incarcerated youth were behind grade level in reading and math, and around 60% had repeated a grade. The educational obstacles after prison begin before the first arrest, says Hinger, when school disciplinarians initially put a child in contact with the justice system.
The school to prison pipeline refers to the process whereby school systems address young people through discipline and criminalization and effectively place them on a pipeline to continuing and more extensive contact with the justice system.
And that can cause long-term harm.
It ends up undermining any sort of positive modeling or reinforcement. It further removes the child's attachment to school, alienating them and pushing them forward towards more negative influences.
And even if an adolescent is innocent when arrested, the length of time required to post bail could lead to a suspension or expulsion from school.
So if a young person came into the system and bail was set and they were unable to make bail for 2 weeks or so, or someone was willing to put up the bail, that young person's education would be disrupted to the extent that very often they were not permitted back into the very schools that they were attending while they were arrested.
Children do attend school while incarcerated, and according to a 2013 Justice Department report, inmates of any age who participate in correctional education programs have 43% lower odds of returning to prison than those who do not. But the negative effects of traveling through the justice system and falling behind in school can follow youth well beyond their release. Formerly incarcerated people are twice as likely not to have a high school diploma. Their unemployment rate? 27%. According to the Prison Policy Initiative, when children are pushed away from education and into the justice system, it leaves them unable to compete in a job market that needs skilled workers. This is especially true if the individual did not receive youthful offender status. That status, Corriero says, means they could
come out of this experience without a permanent criminal record, which is so crucial and important for young people in terms of their capacity to eventually enter into the adult world, if you will, with a clear slate in terms of opportunity.
This is what drove Judge Corriero and his colleagues to set up and preside over the Manhattan Youth Park, a court exclusively designed to deal with the cases of kids between 13 and 15 and their co-defendants, to channel youth cases to alternatives to incarceration programs.
Those who sat in that part were expected to understand the vicissitudes of adolescence, were expected to develop an interactive relationship, if you will, with the young people that appeared before. And what we tried to do was to develop a process that helped us to channel out of the system those children that we thought we could work with by linking them to alternative to incarceration programs.
The youth part eventually became a model for mobilizing social services for young people under a judge's watch, because, Corriero says,
the dominant policy behind prosecuting children should be that of rehabilitation and not a punitive one.
Young people are going through a period of cognitive development, which means not only are they likely to change and mature out of any challenging or problematic behavior, but also that as a product of where they are in life, their reasoning and decision-making skills are different, and they need different things. Youth are just not primed to respond as well to punitive consequences and punishments or negative incentives.
Instead, Hinger argues the key is to hold youth responsible for their behavior outside of the prison system if possible, to stop the negative impacts on education and recidivism before they start.
When effective interventions are made, there are dramatic reductions in negative consequences and problem behaviors.
For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Tim McPhillips.
So as we've seen, it seems that they're in agreement with one of the statements that the author of The Peaceful Solution taught us about long ago, is that a young mind is not even developed until, around 25 years of age. I mean, they can't even make right decisions unless they've been really given a great education in The Peaceful Solution. And so we see that those that at least went to some type of program, which of course there was at least one of those facilities on there that The Peaceful Solution has been taught in with great results. And whenever children were, or teens, young people were introduced to moral character, that these rules that make their life better, a lot of them attach to it, latch on to it, and make it part of their life, and then it makes a difference in their life. But if they didn't get any part of this, then they just learned more of the same and went out there and committed the same crimes and everything, and ended up back in jail. And it became a punishment rather than a correction. Anyways, continuing on towards the bottom of page 109 again. Don't let this fool you. Being a juvenile delinquent confined to a correctional facility, even if it's a non-secure one, is no walk in the park. These offenders are closely watched and must follow all rules in order to be released. On the other hand, secure institutions are similar to medium security prisons. Juveniles have single cells and their freedom is severely restricted. Generally speaking, juveniles spend less time incarcerated than adults that are convicted for the same crime. They are usually released when they reach adulthood. There are circumstances where this is not always the case. For example, if the victim of a juvenile crime was seriously injured or killed, the juvenile can remain imprisoned for life, which is just totally tragic. Let's turn back to lesson plan 6, page D, and we've already started on there actually. Procedure number 6. I ran into that going over onto page 109. But it says to tell students that minors constitute 1/5 of the arrests made yearly. 1/5 of the arrests, wow. And it says read the section juvenile delinquents found on page 109, which we just did, and then analyze the corresponding graph of juvenile arrests found on page 110 and discuss the challenge question. So let's go ahead and turn over from page 109 on over to page 110. And on page 110 at the top, studies indicate that juveniles usually commit crimes as a means of fitting in with their friends. Remember the peer pressure and the influences we were talking about earlier, how strong they are? Think back to when you were a young person and remember how strong that peer pressure was. If the group you were in was doing a certain thing, you were most likely going to be doing that thing too. It's very hard to stand up for what is right when everybody else is wanting to do what's wrong. Usually more than one person at a time is arrested for crimes such as arson, vandalism, and burglary. Yeah, and they get arrested and somebody is going to go ahead and cough up what occurred. There might be somebody that's standing says, I'm not going to be a snitch, and doesn't tell what took place, but somebody in that group is going to spill the beans. It always takes place like that, and they play one against another, and so, most likely you're going to get caught. The more serious the situation is, the more likely you are to get caught. These crimes are often done out of boredom or as a way to have fun. Yep, driving around at night with a gun in the car and just decide to shoot out some windows. Woo boy, how fun is that? The following is a graph of the types of crimes for which juveniles are arrested. So here's a graph of juvenile arrests, and this was actually from 1997. I'm pretty sure it's increased now. Juvenile arrests in the U.S., the percent of arrests that involve juveniles. All crimes is roughly 18.7%. Arson, 50%. Wow, half of all arsons, are juveniles. That's pretty strong. Vandalism, 42.9%. I could see vandalism because that's a lot of people get involved in vandalism. Painting some windows or painting a train car or throwing eggs at somebody, or breaking out windows, whatever. There's all that stuff. That's all vandalism. Motor vehicle theft. That's gotten big because they found out that they're not even going to get prosecuted a lot of times. If they're like 16 or under, they're probably not even going to get in any trouble over that. Burglary, larceny and theft, robbery, forcible rape, that's pretty high number, 17%. Aggravated assault, 14.2%. Drug abuse, murder. Look at that, 13.6% of the murders were juveniles. Vagrancy, prostitution, and driving under the influence. Wow. Okay. Those are some pretty wild statistics, but let's look at the challenge question. And this is what you'd want to ask your students and get a little bit of feedback. Do you think negative conformity and peer pressure might influence juveniles to commit crimes? Do you think negative conformity and peer pressure might influence juveniles to commit crimes? So there's lines there for you to write it down. If you have a student manual, if you have a teacher's manual, it might have a suggested answer there, something that you might hear. But there's lots of crimes like that. We were talking about the vandalism and burglaries and stuff like that, arson. A lot of those are committed with more than just one person. It's a group. You know, two or more. All right. And so instead of making morally responsible choices and encouraging each other to build positive character traits, they instead dare each other to make poor choices. And these dares, it has become very prevalent on social media. There's so many dares out there that, you know, they dare all kinds of things. Dare you to go inside a grocery store and open an ice cream container and lick it and put the lid back on. You know, to go in and spit in a drink container and put it back on the shelf. These are people that are on social media that are influencers, which is rightly said, and they're influencing young people to go and do these things and laugh about it and get by with it and film themselves doing it. Plus many other things that are even more horrible than that, and even things that where they get poisoned and die, or get seriously hurt, or, you know, a new way to get high. You know, there's all these things there's all these dares and challenges that are taking place these days. So on straight talk, let's go back to let's go back here for a minute to the lesson plan. So we talked about the challenge question, and if you have a group situation where you could talk about these things and discuss it, that's great. But it says to choose a student to read straight talk on page 111, and then students can brainstorm. So let's look at page 111. Now on page 111, if your friends try to talk you into committing a crime for excitement or fun, now remember, there's so many things that come to thought at this point in time. Before we even get directly into it, if your friends try to talk you into committing, well, let's look at if your friends, first of all, if your friends. So if you've known about the peaceful solution and been learning about the peaceful solution, then you know how you should pick your friends, how you should choose your friends. So if your friends, so we already have one thing right there that we've either made a plus in our corner or a negative in our corner. If your friends try to talk you into committing a crime, so we can look back and see, well, we've chosen the wrong friends. So you're already in a bad situation. You've put yourself there. You've probably done many things up to this point and have a lot of negatives in your life and a lot of pessimism and many things taking place already, but they try to talk you into committing a crime, excuse me, for excitement or fun, then consider if it will also be fun to get arrested, convicted, and jailed. You know, and it's funny how a lot of that stuff doesn't even enter the mind when, you know, a young person, when they're, you know, a lot of times high, trying to fit into a certain group and do these things, they're more just hyped up with the excitement of it and all than worrying about jail or anything. They're invincible. They think they're going to get away. But there are many ways to have fun, and committing crimes isn't one of them. And that goes back to that friends again. If your friends try to talk you into committing, okay, so right there, you got to realize you've made bad decisions up to that point. You put yourself in that situation. You shouldn't even be in that situation in the first place. And even we as adults need to remember, we put ourselves in situations we don't need to be in sometimes. Even those that practice the peaceful solution can find themselves in a situation and think, how in the world did I get here? How did this take place? Well, you can look back and see jot it down, think about it, and look back and see where you made a bad choice, where you made a mistake. And you can usually find it and say, look, if I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have been here in this situation. If I would have just kept the rules, if I would have just done what my boss told me to do, I wouldn't be in this situation now. Okay, so try starting a business together. You know, these are positive things that people can do. Try starting a business together. You could mow lawns in your neighborhood, of course, if it's legal to do so. Or one of my personal most liked here is learn how to fix cars. You know, you could do that. You could even start a reading club. Now, depending on who your friends are, if you start talking to them about starting a reading club, you might quickly find yourself kicked out of that group, you know, or chastised severely and made fun of and everything. You could start a reading club. In fact, on the previous video, it talked about quite a percentage of young people that don't read at even a mid-school level. I think it was a middle school level. They might have said high school, but I think it was a middle school level. And so there's reading problems too, learning problems. The positive possibilities are endless. The bottom line is you can behave responsibly, you can stay out of trouble, and still have fun. Yes, these things can be fun. You don't have to have that dare, that challenge, that type of excitement, you know. And then it says list some other positive moral ways you and your friends could have fun. And there's several lines for you to list some ways on there, some of the suggestions that you'll find if you have a teacher's manual. And you can study together, play board games, start a hobby, play instruments, you know, start a band, play instruments and learn how to play instruments together, go fishing. I know a lot of young men that enjoy going fishing, and they would, if they could talk anybody in here into taking fishing, they would be trying to talk you into it today, you know. And it wouldn't be a bad thing for them to be trying to talk people into that. I'm not saying go take them fishing. There's parents and authority involved and stuff like that. But anyway, down at the bottom it says, life is a journey that we are privileged to take. It's full of treasures, dreams, and friends we make. And let's go back to the lesson plan real quick. Now, one of the things that you'll see at the bottom of procedure number 6, it says, you know, we're talking about that straight talk that we just went over on page 111. And it says students can brainstorm the answers in the activity and write these things in your workbook. And then there's one of these situations in the book to where, you know, it's kind of like a continuation. Page 112 and 113 really aren't listed in the lesson plan because procedure number 7 jumps to pages 114 and 115, etc. But 112 and 113 are very valid. In fact, I'm going to just bust into this a little bit this class, and we'll continue on in the next class, by the way, which will be this coming Wednesday. I know we've had a couple of Wednesdays off because we had different things taking place around headquarters here, but it'll be taking place this next Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. That'll be the 23rd, is that right? I think it's the 23rd. But let's go ahead and look at the top of page 112. It says, do prisons or correctional institutions help to stop, 22nd, correction there. Not punishment, but correction, okay? A correction. He didn't hit me over the head with anything and tell me I had to go sit in the corner or anything like that. He just corrected the situation, and I accepted the correction. Okay. See how easy that was? Okay. Do prisons or correctional institutions help to stop crime and teach people to be morally responsible? Oh, I see a lot of heads shaking. I heard a couple no's. That would be correct. You just saw a video on it. Do prisons or correctional institutions help to stop crime and teach people to be morally responsible? No. If they did, we would not be building more prisons. We would not be incarcerating more people. We would not be incarcerating more juveniles. It doesn't work. Well, you say, what works? We got to do something with them. Well, The Peaceful Solution Character Education Program covers all bases. There's other programs out there that cover some of the bases and talk about some of the things which tend to get people kind of introduced to a little bit of moral sound character, and they start taking hold of one or two things. But if they stop there, they're never going to get the whole benefit. The Peaceful Solution is the only program I know that teaches the entire gamut. It covers it from A to Z and teaches us how to really look at things and dig deep into what needs to take place in our lives. And it changes the heart and mind both. Not just the mind. It changes the heart to where these things, once they're established, take place and you're never going to turn away from them once that heart is changed. And that's what the Peaceful Solution does that other programs don't do. So being in prison is not a walk in the park. Prison life is dangerous and unpredictable. Once a person serves time, you would also think he would have learned his lesson and dedicate himself to never committing another crime. I mean, that's the mindset out there, is that, oh yeah, he'll go to prison, he'll learn his lesson. Boy, they're going to tear that boy up. When he gets out, he'll know better than to do that next time, boy. Well, no, that's the words of an idiot. That's the words of somebody who believes in punishment rather than correction. And they think that punishment will change it. Has it ever changed it? Yeah, it's changed it. It's changed it to where they won't do it in front of you, because they know they're going to get that punishment. Some don't even care about that. But it hasn't changed the heart. Punishment doesn't change the heart. The reality is that 65% of those released from prison commit more crimes and return to prison within a short period of time. And some people, once they've been to prison, it becomes easier the next time, and the next time, and the next time. With others, it's not that way. With others, they say, I never want to go back there. And they start trying to find a way to do something right in their life and get involved. A lot of people have gotten involved in the Peaceful Solution that very way. But anyways, that is called recidivism. And it's an excellent way to measure how well the prison system is working in regards, to rehabilitating its inmates. Although 35% of inmates do not return to prison once they've served their time, 65% is too large a number to ignore. Some experts believe that prisons do not rehabilitate the majority of their inmates. They feel that prisons are a breeding ground for violence and disease. Inmates are confined to overcrowded cells and very little effort is made to change their behavior. Again, it's all about punishment. Experts also agree that the way modern prisons are set up, inmates learn from each other how to gain more skills in their criminal behavior. As a result, inmates usually leave prison worse than when they went in. For instance, thieves have boasted that while in prison, they met with other prisoners and shared information on how to become better thieves. So, I have an article right here. I'm going to just read a little bit of it and we'll cover the rest of it next class, but it's called Why Youth Incarceration Fails. It's an updated review of the evidence. So this is called the Sentencing Project. And their opening statement says, incarcerating youth undermines public safety, damages young people's physical and mental health, and impedes their educational and career success, and often exposes them to abuse. I don't know if you could hear it clearly, but in the video that we watched, one of the men was talking about how tragic it is when, let's say, a juvenile gets accused of something at school. They immediately, whether it's expulsion or not, but they suspend them. And once they hit like a 2-week period and they haven't been in school, then it's hard to catch up that 2 weeks. Not only are schools highly determined, their budgets are determined upon how many days every individual student goes to school. They get paid for each and every day of students in school. So now that school's not getting paid, and they hold that against the parents and students. In fact, some school districts make the parents pay that difference. But but the student doesn't have much of an opportunity to catch back up. You know, when younger, I remember in California they had what's called continuation schools. And if you got suspended from the main school, you went to a continuation school. And the minimum amount you could stay there was 2 weeks, but you could stay there quite longer than that. And what they did, though, was it was a looser atmosphere, less rules, and they would kind of lower the bar as far as the reading and the math and everything else to what the individual kind of needed to try to get them back on track. I think they were a little bit on the right track with that, on part of it not, but they didn't teach positive moral education. They didn't teach that. It was all about academics. And some people would get back in the regular school and some wouldn't, and then they would continue on, and that 2 weeks or so wouldn't hang over them so bad. But he talked about that, and he said once that's done, it's hard to get the child back on track, and it's very detrimental to them all the way around. And they did mention in there a couple times that, you know, a child's mind is not even grown until 25 years old. So, but anyway, we'll continue this. We're on page 112, and we'll continue this article and the rest of page 112 and page 113 this Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. We look forward to having all of you online come again, and all of you that are here in the convention center in the headquarters here, we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you for coming.